Lillahi ta'ala. Okay, so now we want to talk about istinja today, inshallah. So istinja is the obligatory cleaning after anything wet comes from the front or back private parts, except for ejaculated fluid. So anything wet. If what comes out of those two spots is not wet, then it's not obligatory to make istinja because of that or from that. And the mani, the ejaculated fluid of men and women, is the exception here because it is itself not filthy. And the istinja, it's a case of removing filth. So, what is purification? Purification is raf'ul hadath, lifting impurity, religious impurity, wa izalatun najas, and removal of filth. أو ما في معناهما, or what is as significant as those two are. أو على صورتهما, or what appears, yani what is done like they are done. That which is done as they are done, performed as they are performed. Those four things that I just said to you, that's purification. And where does istinja fit here? It fits under removal of filth. And istinja is a condition for the validity of prayer. It's not a condition for the validity of wudu. If a person needed to make istinja and he made wudu without making istinja, his wudu is valid. And before he prays, he still has to perform istinja. So those two are separate. And you don't need an intention for istinja because it's a removal of filth. Removing filth doesn't require an intention. When we said for anything wet that comes out of the front or back private parts, we talked about the different categories of those or types of those when we talked about what breaks wudu. So that means we're talking about urine, feces, pre-ejaculation, and the wadi, which is the thick fluid that might come out after straining or urinating. If you have any question there, feel free. Now, when is it obligatory to perform this istinja? The istinja that we actually didn't talk about its procedure yet. When is it obligatory to engage in this procedure of istinja? Depends on your case. If your case is that if you don't make istinja immediately, you're going to stain your body or clothing, then it's obligatory to do so immediately. And if your case is that if you don't do it immediately, you will not stain your body and clothing, then it's obligatory to do it before prayer. The scenario of that is someone who might urinate without leaving a drop after finishing and is safe from staining his body or clothing without making istinja. He's still obligated to make istinja, but he doesn't have to do it immediately. And there's something that's called istibra. The istibra for the man is for him to run his finger along his urethra to push out any remaining urine. Really, the way I'm talking about this, the way I'm presenting all this information to you, is as if you already understand istinja. Now, what's the judgment of this istibra that I just told you about? It depends. If a man knows about himself that if he does not do it, he will stain his body or clothing, then he's obligated to do istibra. But if he knows of himself that if he does not do it, he won't stain his body or clothing, then istibra is sunnah for him. Now, how do you do istinja? What is its procedure? You have two ways. One is to use only water, and one way is to wipe. Unless you want to count doing both of them as a third way. Then you'd say, and the third way is to use water and wipe. If you only want to do one of those, then the best way is to use water. Because water will remove the filth entirely. That is the benefit of water, but the con, as they say, or the downside of using only water is that uh, you may need to put your hand or your finger actually into the filth. You may need to literally touch the filth to achieve istinja. And then someone might ask, isn't it haram for a person to stain himself with filth? Like just to put filth on himself? So you're not going to just, if you saw some feces or urine on the ground, you're not just going to put your fingers in there. That's haram. So the answer is, won't be haram if you're pouring water at the same time for istinja. Pouring water, and while pouring the water, you're putting your finger on the spot of the filth to rub away the filth as you pour the water. This is permissible, front side and back side. And by the way, according to some Shafi'i scholars, it's obligatory to use water for the backside. But the Sheikh doesn't mention that here. He doesn't mention that here, but I'm just mentioning it to you as an interesting fact. Some said using water for the back is obligatory. We don't say that. It's permissible to not use water for the front or for the back. We're going to talk about wiping. So when you do use the water, only the water, you're going to pour the water until all of the filth is gone, the bulk of it, and any traces of it. And the traces of the filth are its color, taste, and smell. And you need to do that until you think the spot is clean, clear, pure altogether, no filth left at all. But it is valid to make istinja only by wiping, even for the backside. That's the saying we take. Even the backside, you can make istinja by wiping without using water, as long as you fulfill the conditions of the istinja. You should do this wiping with the left hand, and likewise, when you pour the water with your right hand, and you use your left hand to rub the soiled spot. And when you're wiping, you have to wipe at least 3 times, no less than 3 times. That's the Shafi'i school. If what you're using to wipe is big enough, then you have to use 3 different sides of that object. If it doesn't have enough size to wipe on 3 different sides of it, then you need to fetch or get another object. What kind of object we're going to talk about, inshallah. So no less than 3 times. If you wipe 3 times and there's still something there, then you're going to wipe again. So what do? If you wipe 1 time and everything's gone, you still have to wipe 2 more times. If you wipe 2 times and everything's gone, you're going to wipe 1 more time and you're done. If you wipe 3 times, there's still something there, then you have to wipe another time. And you have to wipe as many more times as needed until the only thing left can only be removed with water. Until the only thing that's left can only be removed with water or small pieces of clay. And that wiping has to be in an uprooting fashion, in a way that you are picking up off of yourself the filth by this object. So the benefit of wiping is that you can lift the body of the filth off of yourself without touching it. You're using this object to lift this filth off of yourself. But the con, which is the downside, is that it will leave a trace of filth on you, although it's permissible to leave that trace. But nevertheless, there is a trace of filth on you. Subhanallah. I had a discussion about istinja with a kafir once. So the kafir said something about wiping. I said to the kafir, you can use water too. And then that person was like, what? Like, so ridiculous. Water? Then they said, what are you going to dry it off with? So you don't have to dry it off, first of all, for that to be clear, because it's just water. So if you cleared the area, there's no najasa there, and the only thing that's there is just water, then, yani, it's not necessary to dry it off, but, yani, it's just water, so you're going to use, if you want to use a towel or use a rag or something to dry off the spot. So the person said, like, no, this is too messy. So I now realize it means he doesn't know how to clean himself. This kafir doesn't know how to use water to clean himself. So that's why he doesn't see how water is fine. So I said to the person, water is always better than wiping. Because if you just wipe only, you're going to leave a trace of filth on yourself. Then that person looked like he was embarrassed. Kafir doesn't make istinja. Now, so it's true. If you do wipe only, you're going to leave a trace of najasa on yourself. But if you do it the sunnah way, you're going to wipe 3 times. And the only thing that's left is something that can't be removed unless you use water. And this is excused and this is acceptable to your Lord. But not like, yani, what a kafir would do because he never learned how to make istinja. And the general torture of the grave is due to not protecting oneself from urine. Now, you have to wipe at least 3 times. If something's left, then you have to wipe as many more times is as needed until you think it's clear. So think doesn't mean no. Think here means confident. Until you're confident that it's clear and that the only thing left is can only be removed by water or small pieces of clay. And if you end it on an even number of wipes, then it's sunnah for you to add one more wipe. So if you end it on 4, wipe one more time. If you end it on 6, wipe one more time. And just to clarify for you even more what it means to say that you left a trace of najasa on yourself. Yes, you can pray with this trace of najasa on yourself if you made valid istinja. But if you submerged yourself into a small amount of water with this najasa on you, it will contaminate all of the water according to the rules you've learned about what makes water filthy in the Shafi'i school. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. Okay, so we already said these 3 wipes have to be by different sides of whatever you're using to wipe the area. At the time of the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam, they used stones. And so the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, فَلْيَسْتَنْجِ بِثَلَاثَةِ أَحْجَارٍ. Let him make istinja with 3 stones. And there were some people who used to make istinja at the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam by using stones and water. This is the best way. If you do it that way, then you wipe first and then pour water. Not pour water and then wipe. The person in the conversation I just told you about was thinking, okay, if I were to use water, then what I'm going to wipe with after. So the actual best way to make istinja, if you were to use both, is to wipe first and then pour the water after. Now the istinja is done. Why? Because if you wipe first, then you won't have to touch the najasa by your skin. And if you pour the water after, you will remove that trace that could only be that could only be removed by water. Now you are completely clean. May Allah raise the rank of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who taught the istinja to his followers. Once I talked to someone who denies the hadiths. They call themselves Quranists. Quranists in their claim means they just want the Quran, they don't want any hadiths. So I said to him, how are you going to know how to make istinja if you don't take the hadiths? So he said, I don't need someone to tell me how to wipe my blank. An answer like that shows you really how far those people are from the knowledge. They don't have any respect. That's a result of his being a hadith denier, that he's disrespectful, uh, such and such. So this thing that you use to wipe in istinja, how must it be? It has to be uprooting. That means it has a grip. It needs to have a grip. So it can't be too smooth, like glass or plastic or cane, the outside of cane. And the inside of cane might be too jagged also. You need to be careful there. Can't use something that's going to hurt you. And it has to be pure, not filthy. So it can't be itself najasa like deer feces, which is hard like a rock, comes out like that. And you can't use something contaminated with najasa. Like sometimes you go into the male stall and you'll find some ignorant person urinated on the tissue. And then the tissue dries and there's yellow there, yellow tissue there. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. That was probably a non-Muslim person who did that. So you can't use that for istinja because it's contaminated, filthy. So it has to be pure. And it has to be solid. Solid means cohesive here. Cohesive means not, it doesn't crumble. It doesn't crumble apart like a clump of soil. Maybe you have a clump of soil, so it looks like one piece, and all you have to do, just apply a little pressure, all of it will crumble. Something like this is not valid for istinja. And likewise, any liquid other than water is not valid for istinja. And it needs to be dry, which you use for istinja, because you don't use moisture to lift moisture. You don't lift moisture with moisture. So you get something dry, yani absorbent, and has a grip so that it will pick up the moisture and the body of the filth from your skin, from your body, yani, from off of you. And it has to be unrespectable. So it can't be a religious paper. And it can't be human food, because human food is respectable. So yeah, it could be animal food. That's possible. But it can't be bones. The animals do eat bones sometimes. You can't use bones for istinja. It's not valid. Like what? Like a stone, or a tissue, or cloth, yani, or a leaf. And this is even if you have water. You're allowed to make istinja without water, even if you have access to water. But sometimes it's obligatory to use water, and it's not sufficient to wipe anymore. Like if the najasa got displaced. The najasa got displaced. Uh, how's that? Yani, that means it went beyond its. It went out of bounds. The najasa went out of bounds. So najasa has its own bounds that, as long as it stays in there, you can wipe it. If it gets out of bounds, you have to use water. So for the backside, the boundaries is, as long as it's still inside the plate, the inner plates of the buttocks, didn't get to the outside. The outside is what is apparent when you're standing. That's the outside. Because when you stand, then the cheeks of the buttocks come together. So whatever is apparent when standing is the outside, so that's out of bounds. If the najasa from the backside gets there, then you must use water for whatever is on the outside. And for the front, then for the man, that's for it to go beyond the glans penis. And for the woman is for the urine to reach where the penis enters. So if any of that happens, then one must use water. And also, it can't be that the najasa dried before you made istinja. If so, then for sure you must use water because you can't wipe it while it's dry. Now, also, there's uh, the case of that the najasa does not go beyond the spot where it stopped. It doesn't, reflow. It doesn't flow anew beyond the spot where it stopped. So if the najasa flows anew beyond the spot where it stopped, then you have to use water. This means even if it's still in bounds, and it's still inside the boundaries. If you have a question about that, feel free. And there's another time when you must use water, which is if something foreign gets on the spot. Foreign means foreign to the area. So what's not foreign to the area? Sweat of that area. The sweat of that area itself is not foreign to the area. Therefore, you can still you can still wipe. Uh, but if something foreign gets to that area, like the sweat of the head, or like olive oil, for example, that's foreign to that area, then you must use water. And here for your information, if a person makes istinja by wiping, and he did a valid one, and he left a trace that can only be removed by water or small pieces of clay. Okay, that's fine. Everything's fine here. And then this person started sweating. And then, as a result, this leaves a stain on his clothing. Because means that the sweat is lifting some of whatever was left there. Now results in a stain. This is still excused. This is still excused. Yes. And like we said, staining oneself with filth is forbidden. It's not permissible to do what some people do. Bad things that people do, like what they call golden shower or the like. And Allah knows best. So that's the end of the Istinja chapter. Any question there?